Hi there, and welcome to the second season of the Humans and AI podcast. In this podcast, we dive into the real-life stories of the top leaders and entrepreneurs within the artificial intelligence, high-performance computing and data center space. These people truly are at the top of their game. We have honest and authentic conversations with all our guests. We'll chat about their career journeys, the highs and the lows, and the lessons they've learned from the mistakes they've made, and the victories they've celebrated along the way. It's all about sharing their experiences and knowledge. We talk about the company they're currently in and how they see the future of the space. So if you're looking for practical advice from people who've walked the same path, or just a little inspiration, you're in the right place. We're going to be releasing new episodes every Thursday, so make sure you stay tuned.
Bruce, great to have you here. How are you doing?
Yeah, very good. Thanks for asking me to join.
No, you're welcome. It's obviously something we've been talking about a little while now. So for the benefit of everyone that's listening in, you able to just give a bit of an intro as to who you are, where you're working, and the role that you've got within the organisation?
Yeah, my name's Bruce Beckloff. I'm CEO of a company called YellowDog. Just a bit of context on that. Compute management platform for really, really large workloads, and we can talk a bit about that in a bit. My background, I've been here in the UK. You can tell I'm an American. I've been here in the UK for about 22 years. Most of that time while I've been over here working in the startup world, but also spending about the other half of that time working at ARM, the microprocessor guys.
And it was ARM that brought you over, was it?
It was. I was working for them in the Valley. Actually, as you find when you work for a corporate, you spend most of your time getting things done at headquarters. So I was spending about 70% of my time over here anyway. They asked me to move over here, and then I moved over here. Met my wife, had kids, normal story sort of thing.
So here's now home.
There is, it is home. And I think, look, I we'll talk about it, but I think it's an incredible opportunity over here. The amount of technology the UK generates is incredible. Challenge has always been being able to commercialize it, sell it. And so that, in any time there's some kind of arbitrage opportunity, there's opportunity for growth. Incredible opportunity here in the UK because the amount of technology that's generated, we just got to find a way to sell it and commercialize it and scale it.
Yep, and that's certainly what the Neo Cloud is all about at the moment. So there's a lot going on there. So we'll talk about YellowDog in a bit. So you came over here with ARM.
Yes.
And so what were you doing for ARM? What was obviously I appreciate you had probably multiple roles within the organisation, but you able to give us a bit of a summary?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, just prior to ARM, I was working for a company called Texas Instruments. We developed chips, semiconductor chips, actually working on MEMS devices, so micro mechanical electrical machines. So I started my career in a fab. So with all the kit and things like that, ended up deciding that you can only do so much in engineering, got into marketing. And then as I was in marketing, the things we were making were very large projectors. In fact, the first digital Toy Story was projected on one of the TI's projectors. So I was in the imaging arena, and then ARM needed somebody in there, what was called segment marketing. And ARM was an incredible organization for really targeting and being very strategic about going out and acquiring customers. So I was in what was called segment marketing. Pretty soon after in segment marketing, I took over the entire group. But our job was to go out and talk to our customers' way up the value chain to understand why anyone would want ARM technology in their different products. And again, this was something that ARM was really, really advanced in the fact that they needed to understand the market and sell their products, not to their customers, but to the other people along the value chain. So my job, go out, understand the market, understand where the technology was going for 5 years on, and then bring that back, also try to encourage people to use our technology. But then by understanding 5 years out, if you think about a chip development for ARM, it took us approximately 2 or 3 years from the day we said go to design a chip. Then it took 2 to 3 years for that chip to be actually fabbed in a semiconductor plant. And then you probably got another 1-2 years before it ever hits volume. So you're talking about 5 to 10 years from the day we say go to the time it actually makes that out into the market. So you want to try to make sure you get that spec as right as possible.
You've always probably looked 5 years, 3 years ahead. I suppose it's different from market to market, but you've got that sort of built in now.
Well, I think, because I think people really don't understand the sort of the time it takes for technology to take hold. I always make this joke. I still don't use Bluetooth headsets because they just don't work, right? And that technology was out in the 90s. I mean, that's a very long time for this stuff to come to fruition. If you look at ARM itself, it was 10 years inside of Acorn before it ever got spun out and then became, and so it's about 40 years old. I mean, people just don't really so you've really got to have that long-term view. And because the cost of developing these things, especially, we see it in the newspapers these days about all the costs, you got to try to get it as right as possible. And so you need to make those guesses as much as you can. By the way, coming from an engineering background and then transitioning in that sort of marketing background was incredibly painful. I had the old days of engineering. You did some stuff and you looked at it and you tested it and it said you got A versus B. A is better, B is worse. I'll go with A. Marketing, you go in and go, okay, I'm going to take a guess 3 or 5 years out, and I think I'll find out in probably 7 years. It's just
you're probably the first person we've had that's actually come from engineering background and moved into marketing. It's not the obvious career path.
I remember sitting in my office and my boss would come in and go, "What are you doing here? Go out and see customers." It felt so strange. I know in this today's remote world, it's not so much, but it felt so strange to be out on the road and trying to talk to people. And so, yeah, for anybody that's ever thinking about making that transition, it's an interesting transition to going from an engineering brain to a marketing brain. And maybe one day I'll make it. So.
You work it out eventually.
Work it out eventually. But that it helps you because and this is what I love about, the startup community here. You're sort of forced in understanding both sides because you have to do both jobs, the commercial side and the technology. And same in the U.S., but I've been exposed to it more over here. But, having to think about those two sides and then trying to think years out about where the market's going to go and then try to dial that back into what can I produce today. Because in the markets I'm in, deep tech, the years, it's years to get things out. It's not like coming out with a new social media app and you're going to find out whether you're right or wrong in 6 months' time. No. At least it's quick and the pain is very quick, if you're wrong. But in deep tech, it just takes such a long time.
And I suppose, obviously, you were there over ARM for 12, 13 odd years, I think it was, in the UK. And you had different positions. So you worked in marketing, but you also did corporate development and strategy as well.
Yeah, guys, I wrote my first business plan for becoming a VC in 2000. And that was a really bad time because that was the dot-com bubble. So it didn't really make it that. But I always had that long-term view of again, marrying finance with tech and investing and stuff. So in about 2005, after doing the segment marketing position for a number of years, I moved into the corporate development team. So I took over corporate development, working in the finance team. So it was actually under the CFO at the time. And again, it was about marrying technology and finance. And actually, as part of that role, I also had investor relations. So one of my roles was to go out and because I could explain tech in a sort of meaningful way or maybe palatable way, I would go out and talk to investors. But so our team had investor relations, corporate strategy. So again, trying to figure out what the next 10 years would look like. M&A. So, okay, we know some tech. We're going to go buy some tech. And again, M&A, as most people know, is a very financial transaction. I mean, there's integration and technology integration, but, it's a very financial thing. And then also we set up a venturing unit while we were there. So investing in small startups that could help the company. So we had that range. But again, it was all about marrying up technology and finance. And that's why I think, as I look back over my years in career and things, that's what's really interested me is marrying those two sides of it up.
It is fantastic. And I think as we talked about offline, the neoclouds now, which obviously you're working for YellowDog, those organisations that have that function, that corporate development strategy, because not all of them have, they seem to be the ones that are more resilient and actually, in a stronger position for growth. And I think with that view, does it give you a more holistic view on actually how to direct a business?
Well, I would argue, if you look at the failures of technology companies, especially deep tech companies, it is almost never because of the technology. I mean, I make this joke all the time. The technology, the light either turns on or off. It's binary, right? It works or it doesn't. And you can test that and really understand what it is. Where companies fail is good financial planning. So, how much runway, how much money they're going to need to scale and grow, and then commercial execution. And that is about going find your customers and selling to those customers. So, whether it's strategic nature or the other, I think me personally, and through my my ARM upbringing, and they were so good about it. They understood that you got to sell your product to actually make a business.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the challenges here, not necessarily because of the creators of the technology, but the other groups around them to help them, accelerate. They don't naturally, exist in great droves here in the UK as much. So, I think it's that ability to go out and commercialize and strategically commercialize. And how do you do it in stages, right? So, had my executive team together, and we're like, okay, what are the 3 things we need to do this year? Okay, it's not boil the ocean and create brand awareness and all that sort of stuff. I mean, we're 18 people and out of Bristol, right? The main thing we got to do is we got to satisfy this specific thing for our biggest customer. We need to go find the next 5 of those customers, and then we need a bit of the roadmap that we've been missing for some time. And other than that, focus on nothing else. Those are the 3 things to focus on.
Clear focus goals really was what helped direct the business.
Yeah, and I think, and in sort of measurable chunks.
Yeah.
What is it? How do you eat an elephant? Bit at a time, right? If you want a big growth story, and I think here in the UK, because scaling is so challenging, and to get capital is so challenging, you actually have to take it a little bit more step by step than you probably would in the US. I mean, I saw LinkedIn's my only sort of social platform I sort of pay attention to, but there's a great clip of Bezos talking about what does the US have? What's the advantage? The banking system? No. The Canada? No. It's risk capital, and over there you can raise $50 million on a seed round with a 10% chance of winning, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't happen out here. So fine. We got to change tack.
Yeah.
You got to think about how to do things a bit differently. Again, this is my view of ARM. They really thought of doing things differently, right? Everybody in the 90s had their own microprocessor, so their own brain of a chip or their own brain of a piece of kit. So what they decided was, or they all had their own chips with their own brain inside. So what they decided is work with everybody, trying to provide the brains to everybody. So instead of trying to compete with everyone head on, with massive amounts of capex and those sorts of things, they changed the model. They'll supply everyone. I think the UK, in general, to make it in the technology market, is going to have to take that kind of attitude. How are we going to do something different? We were talking offline this idea that we're going to 20x our capacity of compute in the UK over the next 5 years. Man, that's a great goal, and I'm all for it. But I say this a lot. It's like taking a knife to a gunfight, right?
Yeah.
You're just like, that's what XAI is doing in 12 weeks. I mean, it's like, how are we going to compete? All right, so for us to really, really make it in this environment, in this world, we've got to figure out how to do things a bit different. And but I think all the skill sets are here to do that. But we just need to execute.
So obviously, working at ARM, you learned a lot. You had a lot of responsibilities. You worked different departments. Obviously, the way you worked in strategy, you set clear focus goals and made sure you achieve those. That came to an end. Eventually, you didn't join BT and work for life, so you moved on. What was obviously you went on to do after that? It was you set up your own VC, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think in the sort of after about 12 years at ARM, we had set up the venturing activity, and we were a very strategic investor. So we were investing in startups to help our strategic goals.
Yeah.
So I wanted to take a slightly different tact, and I wanted to be able to invest in companies to grow them, not the intercompany. And met the head of Vodafone Ventures at the time, a guy named David Leffley, and we both left our jobs in 2013 to start a company called Block Ventures. And Block Ventures is an early stage deep tech investment company, not a fund. So it's different in that respect because we wanted a structure where because we have this belief that deep tech takes a very long time. We felt that the normal venture fund, which is a 10-year fund, 5 years invest, 5 years harvest, that was too short of a time frame unless you're like at the beginning and you're allowed to go to the end for you to grow a company of significant size. So we set Block up to be different and do it as a company. So we sell shares just like every other startup does, and we take that money and use it as working capital or investment capital. But by doing that, we don't have to close up Block at some point. We'll have to give money back at some way through dividends or share buybacks or something like that. But we just felt the market needed something different. So that's what we did. And over that time, we've really, again, developed our strategy into finding out that where the biggest gap in the UK is in the commercial and finance, and it's not the technologist. And so what we've ended up doing is actually implanting ourselves alongside of our technology founders. And we, for some of our companies, become the sort of commercial founders sitting alongside of them. So we end up, actually going in and running the companies alongside of our technical co-founders. So that's how I'm also CEO of YellowDog, because we've gone in and we've seen a big opportunity in YellowDog. And so I actually run the company alongside of running Block Ventures as well.
That's a really good model, because I think we've all seen it. So many CEO who really are engineers, never run a business before, don't know how to run a business. And actually it's one of the reasons why we started this, because speaking to founders, speaking to people who have actually been there, built businesses, a lot of these guys never done it before and don't know and don't socialise in those circles where they've got the opportunity to learn. And I think, you coming in and offering that, so particularly finance, marketing angle as well, like I say, they know the product, don't they?
Yeah, no, they do. And I mean, I have to admit, the first time when I left ARM and I had all this infrastructure and I'm like, I need to do an NDA. So I called up Taylor West saying, need to do an NDA. Oh, we'll do that for 500 quid. And then I figured out I could just read the NDA and then I can do it. And so, you learn very quickly how to change. But yeah, the challenge in this country, among many is, around the capital and stuff is, engineering is actually, I think there's a thought that it's actually really inexpensive to start a startup here in the UK. And I think that's true on the engineering side. Actually, it's amazing and almost like gut-wrenching to see the salaries of engineers here as compared to engineers in the U.S. I mean, the disparity is incredible. But that next stage you need to do is you need to hire your CCO, or you need a sales guy or somebody like that, or you need a finance, an FD or something like that. And the challenge comes in is trying to talk a CCO into dropping their really high paid career now at Amazon, now at Google, now at Facebook or whatever, and go, don't worry, come take a third of the salary you were getting, but don't worry, you'll get all this equity. And that is, no one believes that equity story yet. I mean, I make this joke again all the time, is you go talk to a CCO and their first response is how am I going to pay my school fees? I'm like, well, that's not the startup world. The same thing goes with finance. So again, Block can go in there, and because our model is different, we can get paid in different ways. And so we get paid both by Block and by equity. And so we don't necessarily have to take a salary. So we can be really focused on using our cash to hire the engineers we need to really pay for the things we need to pay for.
So with your Blockhead, what made
no
you...
pun intended.
What made you go for YellowDog? What was it about that business that you saw the opportunity?
Well, we've been involved with YellowDog since 2017. And so even back then, we saw an opportunity. So just to describe what YellowDog does, as I said, is a compute management platform. So we manage workloads, we orchestrate compute, we schedule those workloads on that compute to get the most efficient outcome. And so they had a really automated system for being able to do that, and a really incredibly easy way of bringing up compute into its resource pool. And back then, the main driver of those kinds of workloads was CGI and computer graphics and such. And we could see, there was a need for studios to be able to press a button on Friday and then know that those films and those scenes have been finished by Monday. And so, I mean, it just had to, because the film had a release date, it had to get done. And YellowDog had the ability to expand or contract the compute depending on what the requirements were. And we could see how what we look for in Block, and for, I would say, the startup community should think about, is a venture capitalist, or what you want to look for is a company that has again, we like enabling technology, so down the tech stack, but it can enable one vertical, and then you just can replicate that one next. So we could see in CGI that it was there. We could see the next one's probably going to be in sort of life sciences, and because they were already doing really big simulations, big workloads, engineering, so CFD, computational fluid dynamics, these sorts of things, modeling for cars, and then financial services. So we did attack this one vertical market and then move it across. And so we saw that tech. And the other thing about a startup, it's really, the other side of it is timing, right? I mean, we can look at NVIDIA, forgetting yesterday, but NVIDIA was all about graphics cards for gaming. It was in CGI, and then it got thrown into crypto, and then after crypto, it came into, and then wham, OpenAI comes out, the transformer models come out, their GPUs are well sorted for that, and then, you'd have to say the timing couldn't have been better for them, but whether they knew that timing was going to happen or not, I don't know.
They got lucky, maybe, but
but they were. I mean, they're also very good. But there's a lot of timing. So for YellowDog's case, the world of compute was slow. The challenge, we could see still the technology was there. There was this little thing. What happened in 2020? Oh yeah, a pandemic, where the entire CGI world, fell off a cliff. And so I think where Block is also different is, we're not probably good at a portfolio strategy where you have 10 startups and you kill 8 and 2 make your portfolio. If we put money into something, it's like we've done it for a reason. In YellowDog, we could see the same thing. Compute wasn't getting any easier. Compute, requirements weren't going down, and so we continue to work with the company and really come on board. And if you see, it's only getting worse, right? The change about YellowDog is the requirements of compute. I mean, you got Stargate, you've got the Saudi, DCs, you've got DCs in Iceland, you've got compute just going through the roof, and you've now got applications fighting for that compute. You've got the AI applications that need it, but you've still got sort of day-to-day stuff that's going to use it. So we can, and I'd say maybe we got a bit lucky in that same way, where we stuck with this with YellowDog long enough that it intersected where the compute requirements were just going through the roof. And so I think we're quite at an interesting place with YellowDog and what's going on in the world.
So going back a few years, obviously with COVID, because we all went through COVID, and it was a killer for a lot. You guys were obviously centered around the CGI side, which obviously fell off a cliff. Film production, as an example, stopped altogether, along with everything else. How did you actually stabilize that business and diversify then?
So just to kind of describe, we were really ramping up in Q1 of 2020, and then literally in May, our revenues forecast went from, I don't know, I think we were around 2 or 3 million, went to almost zero for the rest of the year. I mean, it went all the way. It just shut. How do we make it through? Again, it was a belief of Block in the technology. I wasn't running it. I was on the board, but the company had a plan, and we had a plan of pivoting away from being so vertically focused. We were really vertically focused, even to the point where people could submit their CGI projects to us, and we go render and send them back. And so we decided to pivot the company to be a much more vertical or a horizontal, sorry, not vertical, much more horizontal focused, and start working on the other markets that we found interesting or that we could serve. So one of our first test cases was in the life sciences space. So we did a year's worth of drug discovery in 7 hours. So we took that literally what would take a year. So imagine, you press go on Excel, the little thing spins, and a year later you come back and you get your answer. So we had a very similar, but we did it in 7 hours. And the way we did it was, we tested 339 million compounds in 7 hours. And the way we did it was we built the 6th largest supercomputer in the world in 33 minutes and then ran it. And so, we were sitting there, we just built a really big computer in the cloud with AWS. And that's our model is, we believe anything can be quick or cost effective. It's whatever your constraints are. You can build a really big computer, or you can build a really small computer, and whatever it is to fit your needs. And so we started going after those markets. Again, over time, the CTO actually took over and ran the company for a period of time. And then I stepped in 2023 to take it forward from there. And where we've ended up is finding, you test your markets, right? You try to understand. CGI never came back. Most of that has still been farmed out to China to really cheap data centers that, basically it's electricity. So rendering's can be on a very low-cost process. Life sciences is still one of those we feel like we could really go in and do some interesting things. The challenge is, and these are very gross statements about markets, but that market is almost like we'll just throw more PhDs at it. They're free anyway. They come out of the college and just throw more people at it. Engineering is just very slow. Automotive and things like that take a very long time to make decisions. And so where we've, again, focused our efforts, being very focused, is in financial services. And financial services, who are trying to chase the speed of light, make their decisions 1 second faster than their competitor. Because if you could have sold NVIDIA a second faster than everybody else yesterday, you would have been in a pretty good spot. So that's where we focused, and they find a lot of value in that ability to make decisions faster. So we really have focused the company after that time of being so focused on CGI, which had the compute requirements, to figuring out exactly where our value is, which is helping people and companies make decisions faster.
So once you've identified the market, so you guys, finance is your main play at the moment.
Yeah.
How have you actually sort of taken that plan and that idea and executed on that to become somebody that, a bank or a financial institution will look at YellowDog as a serious partner?
There's kind of two directions for us. It's through partnership is the first one. The challenge with a startup is it doesn't have a balance sheet that people trust to buy. I describe a technology stack is a stack of technology, and people are judging and basing their whole business processes on. And so you as a startup, and actually think of it more 3D, think of it like Jenga, right? And you're asking this major hedge fund to go and poke out one of those bricks down at the bottom, one of those critical corner bricks, where if it was just a little bit on the side, and put the YellowDog brick in that. And that's a tough thing to do. So we have our two phase approach is one through partnerships. So we have very strong partnerships with AWS mostly, GCP, Azure, and so these are the guys that are also getting the value from more compute. So if we can help them exploit that as well. So we do a lot of partnership work, and we do joint customer calls and trading of leads. And then on the other side is you try to find those that probably are okay with having a little bit more wobbly Jenga stack because they're a bit smaller and they need to make their decisions faster. So it's not, the biggest hedge funds in the world. They're the newcomers and those that are willing. And in that, we actually have 2 weeks ago hired a BDR or an account exec, but to go off and focus and create contacts. And so that's it. It's good old fashioned, I don't know,
Knocking on doors.
Larry, Glenn Ross, give me the good leads stuff. It's just, you have to find a lead, you have to talk to him, and you have to go off and promote the value. But again, in financial services, in the smaller hedge fund space, we can help them, one, more effectively use the compute they have, and two, make decisions faster. And again, that is what they need to do. They need to make decisions on stock trades and stuff faster than their competitors to give them alpha.
Absolutely. And I think, obviously going down two routes, partnerships and direct. Now, AWS huge as an example. We've seen, I know loads of companies that got partnerships with AWS and they sign an agreement. It doesn't actually go anywhere. How have you actually turned it into a successful partnership with those guys? Because obviously getting those sales guys in AWS, for example, working with you, talking to you, the partner manager, the channel managers, how have you actually turned it into a successful partnership?
Well, I give a lot of credit to our CCO. He's an absolute machine at just, lack of a better word, worming his way into an organization and fanning out. And again, the best way we found to do it, especially with AWS, is to find a common goal. And that common goal is that AWS wants to provide more cloud support to financial services. So we've really tried to narrow down onto the financial services team, get to know them, and develop those relationships. I mean, with that, it really is. What's great about, I hope any sales commercial people that are listening to this don't take offense to this, because I find it a wonderful thing. It's very simple. If we can show AWS's sales team how they're going to meet their quota faster, they're going to be very happy to work with us. And so that's what we work a lot on, working directly with the sales teams within the partners, within AWS and such, to show them how we can help them sell more cloud compute faster. And then all of a sudden we become a lot more interesting. But you're exactly right. AWS is a large organization. I mean, I worked at ARM. I had every startup calling me and wanting a partnership. And the startups are like, one, again, running a VC, you get the deck and they go, we have a partnership with AWS. And we're sitting there going, okay, so does everybody else. And so also don't get disheartened just because AWS doesn't or call you back immediately. You just as a startup, you just have to keep chipping away at it. And, no one calling you back, just remember they're very busy. Also remember, anyone you possibly compete with is going in to talk to them as well. And so you just have to keep working at it and showing more value, again, to me in the partnership model, more value to their sales teams. And if you can really show value to those sales teams, you think, you'll find you'll spread out very quickly within an organization.
Absolutely. And so that with YellowDog, in terms of the here and now, and obviously looking into the future, you're the guy here that's got that plan 5 years ahead. That's what you've been doing. So now appreciate, it's about tomorrow, not just 5 years ahead as well. So what do the plans look like for the organisation to remain competitive, to remain adding value? Where do you see you taking the business?
Well, I think it's still quite interesting to me how slow even what we think is the highest tech, deepest tech world is, that, is still quite slow on movement. And actually, interestingly, we see the world has not moved to cloud yet. I know we see all this stuff, but the world still has a tremendous amount of on-premise compute, and they need to manage, and with AI now, actually, you see even more, because people are so desperate for their GPU chips, they might even build their own data center just to have access to them, so they can have assured access. And so what YellowDog is really focused on right now is, again, I'm trying maybe fancifully be a bit contrarian. I believe the world is not completely cloud yet, and so there's a lot of people that are going to be looking at exploiting both on-prem and cloud. So I think YellowDog is really able to give somebody a hybrid environment. So that's on premise. And that then allows the finance team, the CFOs of the world, which is really where we'd like to talk to people more about, allows them to really, and this is completely non-technical, manage their fixed and variable costs. You're going, oh God, I got to go back to MBA school. What's fixed? And the fixed cost is the computers you buy, and you've got CapEx, and that goes on your balance sheet and all that sort of stuff. And you actually want to keep that as minimal because that's a real cost. And then you got the variable cost, which is your cloud. And so we're trying to enable people to really better manage that fixed and variable cost. So the way you do it is, when you have your fixed and you're bursting out to cloud, so you're just using cloud and that variable cost, and as that variable cost goes up, then you should buy some more computers and it would be more cost effective in moving through that. So YellowDog is really about enabling people to do that, but only to, again, get back to make decisions faster. Because the worst thing that could happen as a hedge fund, you've got your on-premise kit, you run out of space. I mean, that is one thing about a data center. You do run out of space and electricity. So, we want to make sure that if, I don't know, something happens, deep, whatever comes out next, people can make a decision and they need to burst out to the cloud because they need a bunch of resources to do their algo quick and get back. So YellowDog in phase today is really about helping people manage that compute and that variable and fixed cost, and trying to give them this is such an overused term, but a single pane of glass. So people don't have to think about, am I running this on my in-house computer or am I sending it out to the cloud? So the way that YellowDog's tech work is we actually obfuscate the underlying compute resource. So we put these little agents down that understand it's an AMD processor, an Intel processor. It has this kind of an NVIDIA accelerator. It's got this much RAM or, and this, that, and the other. So, and then that then registers to the platform. And then the platform says, okay, I've got a task that looks this shape. I'll send it down to that compute resource. Now, what you didn't hear me say is that is in AWS or it's in on-prem or it's in GCP. Actually, for YellowDog, we don't care where it sits. And so we can enable people to very efficiently manage their compute resource and manage that fixed and variable cost. I think the future of YellowDog is the one I find the most interesting, and still goes back to why Block originally invested. I mean, I could be completely wrong, but it feels to me that we're kind of about, 2, 3, maybe 5 years off of peak compute.
Yep.
Right. So we have peak oil. So I've got this idea of peak compute, and peak compute is we're spending so much money on these data centers with so much resource. And then something like what happened yesterday comes out, no, we don't need as much resource. And that's how the world is. I mean, the world becomes more efficient. Even in the sort of AGI space, I mean, as I was saying sort of out in the reception, how many humans do you know that know everything? What you find is you're going to have specialists that are physicians and lawyers and HR and and I would think probably AI is going to go down the same way. And when you go that very specialized, you can be more efficient about your LLMs and models and such. So we can see, I wonder if there's going to be a time where we have, whether it's spare capacity or the distribution of capacity needs to be better. And so I have a view and I think of a world where YellowDog can help, again, YellowDog doesn't care where the resource sits. It can just send you one somewhere. So, you may be a hedge fund, but today you're on a low trade, but you've got some stuff and somebody needs to get a new drug discovery thing done, but, wherever they're used to process is a bit full. So you could imagine YellowDog could send it over and fit into this extra capacity. So this all comes back, I think this comes back from my ARM days. It's just about efficient use of compute. And I think we just don't efficiently use compute today.
I mean, to be fair, you sort of answered my next question. I mean, I think, what's the date today? I'm losing track of time. So it's the 28th of January. Obviously, this week we had DeepSeek, big announcements yesterday. We then had Keir Starmer make the announcements and then the initiatives around AI infrastructure developments and the commitment of billions into the UK economy. Typical Trump went one bigger. So, with 500 billion last week.
Yeah.
And to be fair, it's exciting, but it's a lot of noise. And it is a lot of noise. It's very distracting, and people get excited, people get terrified. And I can imagine being in your position, working in the computer, like, crikey, where are we going? What direction are we going in? I mean, how do you manage that to sort of stay the course? And is it just go, actually, this is going to be the same next year, and say the year, because it's all about innovation. It's constantly, and actually the demands are always going to be different, but ultimately the demands are different, but the needs are almost the same. So how does it sort of work for you?
Well, I sort of go back to my Bluetooth example. And by the way, I know the AirPods are wonderful, but they're just so expensive. I'll just plug in my headphones
For £11.
For £11, but yeah. So I don't know how to remove the noise from because you can't remove the noise. So all you can do is work with your customers, and that that's the only thing. And the challenge again for startups, especially here, is the venture community is swayed by the noise. So you almost have to, if you're trying to raise money, you've got to go make something that tells how the noise is, you're going to fit into that noise. Luckily, we're not raising money, so I don't care about that. What I want to do is then go to customers and say, what's your problem? And what they say is, I need to burst from my on-premise to cloud. And you're like, well, what about all this AGI and OpenAI and ChatGPT? And they're like, yeah, that's great, but I need to burst from on-prem to cloud. So you find out that actually the market, the real where people are spending money is not quite there. Now, there's a huge amount of money being spent on AI and tools that are enabling people to do things more effectively and efficiently and stuff. So I'm not saying that stuff isn't going on. I just think the actual mass market is just not nearly as quick. So it's very easy to keep focused because you keep telling your team that the way our bills get paid and our salaries get paid is by us selling stuff to people. And they go, oh, well, let's go find out what our customers need and we'll go sell them that stuff. I do think actually in the startup community, especially in some areas, that they forget where the money comes from. And they're like, well, you're either getting money from investors and, the salaries have to come somewhere, or you sell something to somebody and then that money goes in and pay your salary. So it's very easy for us to stay focused. I mean, I'm a big Bezos fan, right? He's just so customer focused, and that was what was great about ARM. It was like, in fact, I once got a bad performance rating because I was the lowest 10% of the airline users, and the reason was I'd met my wife, so I wanted to be around her, and so I didn't go on a flight. And I got her talking to, because ARM knew that there were no customers here in the UK for them. So if you were here, you weren't talking to customers. I mean, Monday morning in Virgin Lounge, it was great because we used to be like Virgin's second largest. They may still be now, but back in the early days, you'd see everybody in the Virgin Lounge on Monday. Oh, where are you going? Well, I'm going east. Which way are you going? I'm going west. So you're either going to China or the West Coast. And I think, I do see in the UK and the technology founders, they don't have that, I got to go find a customer. And those customers, again, back to my comment, there's 20 other people trying to get to those customers. So no matter how cool your tech is, you build it, they're not necessarily going to come. You got to go find them and go sell to them. And that'll keep you really focused.
Absolutely. So takeaways then from YellowDog and the way you run it is it's clear focus, customer first, and building partnerships. Obviously going down the direct route too, but those partnerships are really what are helping you sort of build the business.
Yeah, I think the partnership. And look, I think AWS is great. They really do. And they're a massive behemoth of an organization, but they are really good to work with. And GCP is really good to work with. We don't have as much with Azure, but I'm sure if we had enough resource, we could get there. But these companies are. But again, we have to go back to self-centered, right? They want to sell more stuff, so you got to find a reason to do it. But I think in the early days, that is the only way. You either have to go to even on the sales, a startup has to sell shares and sell product. So the way you do it, you go to friends, families, and fools, and then and such. So you either go to because somebody knows somebody and they will trust enough to take a call from you that you can go try to sell them until you build up a level of logos on it, or you work through partnerships. And I do find the big organizations, as long as you understand their motives and understand that they're busy, really do embrace the sort of SME companies, because they do know there's innovation there. The corporates don't innovate as quickly as they used to, but that's fine. That's what they expect the venture community to do, is innovate and then be a part of their processes. So yeah, I personally think partnerships the way to go, and then especially in the UK, brand awareness, marketing programs, things like that. Especially in the deep tech, again, this is my area, I'm not saying for everywhere, is much further down the road, because you aren't going to be able to compete and get your head above the noise at the level of capital that you're going to be able to raise in the UK right now.
Absolutely. And so, final question before we finish up. Obviously, you've got VC background, you're the CEO of YellowDog. People that might be listening that may be engineers, in their own startup, it's very small, growing, but they've got a real good product. What's the advice you'd give them to get that business moving forward?
My flippant one is go find you an American, a carpetbagging American who's going to sell the shit out of it. But that's, that engineer. So, if I look at my co-founder in Block, David, he's much more technical, although he's got 10 years of experience. He's sold stuff, so he's quite a good mix of engineering and commercial. But, that in all startups, in all successful groups, there is the duos at least, and that is a tech and a commercial. And so for any of those engineers out there with a great product, you just have to find a person that can sell and is willing to get on planes and go sell, because I still think remote is great, but it's still a very personable, especially again in the deep tech where there's procurement and things like that. It's still a very face-to-face type sell process. So my advice is, if you're an engineer in this country, you've got to find somebody who's commercially minded, who's willing to take a leap with you to go off and try to make something into something big.
That's it, ultimately. You've got to prove someone wants to buy it.
Yeah, so I'm telling you, it's not rocket science. To pay salaries, you got to sell stuff. At some point, the money will run out from investors, so you've got to be able to sell something to pay your bills.
That's it. That's a good way to end it, isn't it? Well, look, thank you very much.
No problem. I enjoyed it.
We'll do it again soon, but it's been really good.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
Fantastic.
Cheers.
Cheers, man.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you're looking for more practical advice or inspiration from those who've been there and done it, stick with us. We're releasing new episodes every week, so don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and follow Asobi on LinkedIn. This episode was brought to you by Asobi. I'm the founder and managing director, and it's our mission to connect the very best talent to the most exciting scale-ups in the artificial intelligence, machine learning and data center space. Thanks again. See you next time.